Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2026 Rocket Classic DFS Tactics Show. Per usual on a Wednesday night, we're going to take our final look at the forecast for Detroit and the Rocket Classic, see if we need to factor in any wind or rain and perhaps any wave advantages into our considerations. We will take a look at the model or mixed condition model that I've made for the Rocket Classic this week. We will cover my rankings, go over the ownerships, make some lineups at the end of the show, and of course, put your thoughts and opinions into chat. We're going to continue our trend or our tradition of making a lineup as a community and putting it into a big GPP. You'll also want to stick around and tell me if you think I am absolutely batshit insane. I have a 6K player as my number one player this week in my rankings. So would love to hear your all's feedback. But enough of the tease. Let's get right into it. All statistics provided tonight and moving forward are from both the Rabbit Hole over at BetSperts and Fantasy National. The Rabbit Hole is acquiring or merging with Fantasy National, so I'm in the process of migrating all of my files, my data over to the Rabbit Hole formatting. Make sure you are subscribed to the Rabbit Hole. It has everything you need week in and week out for the PGA Tour to make the right wagers, to optimize your lineups. It has a tournament simulator, a lot of articles from the great minds in the industry. If you were a member at Fantasy National, they have brought over a lot of the old functionality. Can't say enough great things about the Rabbit Hole. I should have migrated over to them sooner. Now that I'm here, I am starting to reap the benefits of that. And you can too if you are a subscriber to the Rabbit Hole. Make sure you're doing that. It is well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to all the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally I post research early on in the week regarding some course and tournament info, patterns of previous winners, things like that. I have put that on hold until I get all caught up, migrating all of my files over. But when that resumes, if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show, so that'll be out later this evening. If you want to see the players I've wagered with my own money and the players I'm using most often in my lineups, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a fantastic article called The Fringe. Highly recommend it. I've worked with Gabe now for quite a few years. Really enjoyed it. It's been informative. It's been fun. And make sure you're following them over on social media as well, because that is where we put our detailed write-ups for the 2026 Picks Challenge that we have been doing starting last year. Gabe has taken a 2-point lead after a pretty poor showing by me last week at the 3M. So I have a little bit of work to do to catch up to Gabe there. But if you want to see our thought process and our reasoning for the selections that we make week in and week out, give him a follow as our write-ups are over on his social media page, and subscribe to his article as well. Lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat's open. Want to hear from you. I see quite a few of you in there already. Get to you after the intro here, but I have a poll question typed up. Would love to hear the community's feedback on it, based around the young winner last week, Jackson Koivun at the 3M. But put your thoughts and opinions in the chat if you have any questions this evening, lineup considerations, if you want to deep dive a player, anything and everything for the Rocket Classic, put it in the chat. I'll be more than happy to help you out and get to as many of them as I can. If you're not able to catch the show live, put your thoughts and opinions into the comments. I'll always get to those as well. So let's get into it. Let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2026 Rocket Classic. We're going to start, as we always do, on a Wednesday evening with the super forecast for Detroit and the Rocket Classic. Good evening, Z. Good evening, Trip. Thanks for jumping to chat. Good evening, Muson. Thanks to all of you for jumping into chat. Very much appreciate it. I'm going to center this camera just slightly. There we go. Good luck this week. Have hit back-to-back winners at this event, the 5th major. Yeah. So I mentioned in my write-up over on Gabe's social media page that this tournament has a big soft spot for me, considering my biggest ever hit and my first really hit was here at the Rocket in 2021. I was fortunate enough to have Cam Davis at 150 to 1 in 2021. Kind of kick-started, my belief that I could do this, that people might listen, things of that nature. So this tournament has always had a soft spot for me. I do like it. I hate that it is going away, or at least the Rocket is going away. Maybe not necessarily Detroit Golf Club. But yes, Trip, we are going to try and continue the success that it seems you and I have both had here at the Rocket Classic in Detroit. Muson says money time. Absolutely, that's the goal. We're going to try and get there this week. Hey, good evening, Mark. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Tuning in at the right time. We just got through with the intro and the introductions. So speaking of which, let me post the poll question for this evening. And it's based, around Jackson Koivu and his win last week at the 3M, which was very, very impressive. I played him a little bit, not nearly as much as I should have, obviously. But with his win, there's been a lot of talk about, the up-and-coming young players on the PGA Tour, particularly on the American side. You're starting to talk about international competitions, Ryder Cup, President's Cup, and all that stuff. But I'm going to take a step back. And in my mind, and you might disagree, but in my mind, there are 4 players that are pretty darn young who are, I think, going to be very good on the PGA Tour. And if you think of somebody else and you want to put them into chat, just say something to the effect of, other chat answer or whatever, so that way we don't get confused, wanting to look at that player per se. But of these 4 players, at least, in my mind, the 4 that are young and up and coming, who do you think is going to have the best career? Is it Blades Brown? Is it Ben James? Is it Jackson Koivu? Or is it Miles Russell? And understand, I only had 4 options in terms of a poll. I put them in alphabetical order, so that's not necessarily, my ranking of the 4 or anything. But would love to hear the community's thoughts, especially since Jackson Koivu winning in his, 3rd, 4th professional start. I know he played quite a bit on the PGA Tour, but it's just an interesting thought that I had this week. I certainly am leaning one way with who I'm thinking, but I would love to hear from you all. All right, let's get into why we are here this evening. That is for the Rocket Classic. You see that we've had quite a bit of wind today, which would have dried out the course of any rain that may have happened yesterday. Tomorrow, especially tomorrow morning, looks like they might be dealing with some slight gusty winds. The sustained winds actually pick up later on into the day, but the gusty winds seem to be most prevalent in the morning. And then Friday is pretty darn even all the way through. Quite warm. I imagine it's going to be fairly pleasant. The humidity has dropped off, at least where I'm at in Indiana. Granted, I am about as far away from the Michigan border that I can be in Indiana, but still relatively same area of the country. The humidity certainly has dropped today, so I imagine it might be pretty pleasant, but still going to be pretty warm. High of near 90 on Friday, mid to high 80s tomorrow. But in terms of a wave advantage, if this forecast were to hold, you would probably want to give a slight favor to the Thursday PM, Friday AM portion, just because of these gusty winds that could take place early tomorrow morning. I'm going to use it in terms of a tiebreaker if I'm trying to decide between players, but I am certainly not going out of my way to factor it into lineup building or anything like that. I'm not full stacking Thursday PM, Friday AM because of this. I'm not really all that conscious of how many players I have from each wave. in my lineup. If I'm trying to decide between 2 or maybe 3 players, I will use it as a tie break in this scenario. And then we zoom out, we take a look at the weekend. The weekend looks like it's going to be pretty wet. Saturday looks like it's going to be a constant rain. I imagine Sunday is going to be fairly wet up in Detroit as well, but very little wind and very cool temperatures. It looks like it's a cold front that's coming through in Detroit on Saturday with highs, not even supposedly reaching 70, and then warming up again on Sunday. So we'll have to see, but for our purposes, since this is a full field with a cut, we're trying to get 6 of 6 through and then worry about the rest as it happens. So I'm not going to really mess with this rain. If it happens to affect my players, so be it. I'm just trying to get 6 of 6 through. So with this forecast, again, I would give a slight favor to the Thursday p.m., Friday a.m. portion. I'm not going to factor it in a bunch. I'm using it as a tie break. But, with these gusty winds, if you wanted to play that angle, you certainly could. All right, with that, we're going to go over to, I almost said Fantasy National. We're going to go over to the rabbit hole over at BetSperts and take a look at a couple of things just very, very quickly. I am under the belief that this course is going to play pretty similarly to what it has in years past. And because of that, I did end up settling on thinking this will be easy. Now, the final winning score might not indicate that. We might not get a 22 under, a 24 under. I certainly don't think we'll get to 26 like Tony Finau did, just because this has changed from a par 72 to a par 70. But the thing about it is, the 2 par 5s that were converted to par 4s, the 7th and 17th, I believe they were easy. They were the 2 easiest holes on the course. They played to a stroke average of about 4.5. So they were difficult par 4s, but really easy par 5s. So really nothing about the course has changed a whole lot. Yes, they've done some cosmetic things with, restructuring the greens, and the greens are going to be a little bit more bouncy. They've certainly brought in some more bunkering. But at the end of the day, I still think this is going to be one of the easier courses that these players see on tour this year. So with that in mind, your top performers in scoring conditions that have been very easy and easy, I think it's more easy than very easy, but to each their own. Your top performers in those conditions: Siwoo, Hideki, Davis Thompson, Jacob Bridgman, Zach Bauschow, Wyndham Clark, Eric Cole, Ben Coles, Seabez, Christian Bezuidenhout, and last week's winner, Jackson Koivu. Meisner, Phillips, Blair, Perry, Cantlay round out your top 15 there. The only other overarching filter is a good segue into the mixed condition model, so I'll save that for when we go over there. You can feel free to disagree with me and say so in chat. Try to say it as nicely as you can if you think I'm an idiot. But I just don't see this course suddenly turning into Memorial Park in Houston. I don't see it turning into Bay Hill. I still think we're going to get a winning score up in the upper teens. Because a lot of these par 4s are quite gettable. You have 2 par 3s that are less than 170 yards. This is going to be gettable for the best players in the world. And I know this field strength isn't the best. Scotty, Rory, those types of players aren't here, but you still have Siwoo, who's had a career year. Hideki. I mean, you still got big names here this week. I think we get a pretty darn respectable score or winning score this week for the last Rocket Classic. So I mentioned that I was kind of focused on 2 overarching filters. You saw the easy there. The segue into the mixed condition model that I've made for the Rocket Classic and Detroit this week. The other filter is Don Ross Designs. just like Pete Dye, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, there is a skill to playing Don Ross designs. Sedgefield, Detroit, Pinehurst, Aronimink earlier this year for the PGA. These are all Don Ross designs. They all play, while they have their idiosyncrasies or their differences, they all play fairly similarly. Um, Sloped greens, severely sloped from back to front. You certainly you need to be accurate off the tee, but here maybe a little bit less so. There's just a skill set to playing Don Ross designs. So I'm going to go with 10% to start the mixed condition model on performance on these Don Ross designs. I went all the way back to 2022 just to give players enough rounds to make it statistically significant. Again, this is mostly Sedgefield, the Rocket Classic, Rocket Mortgage in older years. Eastlake, if anybody made it to Eastlake, like Xander, like Cam Young, that is also a Don Ross design. And then you've got a couple of majors in there. Aronimink from this year, Pinehurst from 2024. So that's the sample size that this is pulling in. 10% there. 10% in off the tee on driver-heavy courses. Detroit forces driver in players' hands. Last year, 86% driver usage. So if everybody is hitting the big stick, then that means I want to find the players who are best with the big stick, and that generally means length. So when driver is forced into players' hands, 10% who's the best off the tee there, 10% in driving distance. And this is two different time frames. I believe driver heavy, I had to go back to 2025. Driver distance, I just went the last 24 rounds, I believe. But I'm focused on the distance. Unlike last week at the 3M, where you had water quite a bit off the tee that players had to worry about, that's not the case here in Detroit. You've got a lot of miss room. A lot of miss room. Places like Vedanta, places like TPC Toronto. I don't know necessarily about Deer Run, but Aronimink, Oakdale, another former host of the RBC Canadian. These are the types of places that I want to look at for driving, particularly TBC Toronto, Memorial Park, even a little bit Myrtle Beach. Those places promote driver, and you have a lot of miss room. So you don't necessarily need to be an Aaron Rye, a Brian Harmon type. I mean, look at the past champions. Aldrich can spray it quite heavily. Cam Davis isn't the most accurate with his driver, but he's certainly long. Ricky, a little bit of an outlier there. Tony, in his day, was just an elite driver. He was long and fairly accurate. Bryson, extremely long. So that is what I'm looking for this week, is the longest of the long. 10% off the tee, 10% driving distance, 20% approach. Look, Don Ross designs, much like Pete Dye, you can't hide with your irons. Now, this is one of the courses that can be bombed and gouged, but typically, Don Ross designs, you're not going to be able to hide your irons. You're going to have to play very, very well with them. So 20% in terms of strokes gained approach. I want to make sure guys aren't going over the green on these severely sloped greens. Guys are hitting their number. Guys are hitting the right quadrant of these greens, because these greens were enlarged. They were 5,000 square feet or 5,100 square feet. Now they've been enlarged to about 6,700 square feet. So they've really added a lot of green surface to the greens here at Detroit. So it's not enough to just hit the green regulation. You're going to have to find the right quadrant. And so 20% approach. 5% each in these wedge opportunities gains 50 to 100, 101 to 150. I would have loved to have just done 101 to 125, but we don't have that option in terms of opportunities gained, so I had to go to 101 to 150. Now, you're probably sitting and looking at your screen going, why in the world are you looking at wedges when they just converted 2 par 5s into long par 4s? And you're right, they have. But you still have several short par 4s here. I mean, short par 4s. And one of the par 3s will play under 150 yards throughout the week. A lot of times this is easy because players have scoring clubs in their hands. And I still think it's going to play similarly, even though those 2 par 5s are going to be, or 2 par 4s are going to be a little bit harder. Guys are going to have to give themselves plenty of opportunities to score this week. So 5% each in those ranges. See who gives themselves the most opportunities. 10% in 200 plus procs. You still have 2 par 5s that you need to take advantage of. You have the 2 new par 4s that are both over 500 yards. You also had another par 4 that was over 500 yards on their scorecard. So technically, there are 3 par 5s over 200 yards here at Detroit. So there are going to be still quite a few 200 plus approaches. I didn't do opportunities gained with 200 plus. I just wanted to see generally who's best with those irons, getting it closest to the hole. 5% around the green, not a big factor this week, but I do think some greens are going to get missed this week more often than they have in the past, especially with the bouncy greens. So I do want to make sure anybody that I am rostering isn't an utter disaster around the green. I mean, Aldrich Poggeiter is not good around the green, but he was here last year. I just want to make sure the guys aren't horrendous around the green. So only 5% there. Hey, good evening, Rose. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Bet Cam Davis is top 10. We'll talk about Cam Davis if people really want to. I didn't do anything with Cam Davis, but if I were going to do anything with him, DFS, one and done, or outrights, I would bet him as opposed to play him in DFS. So I do like that you went with that route. I do not like playing him in DFS the way he is playing right now. We'll get into that in the 6Ks, but I would rather outright him than play him in DFS. 5% putting on bent and Poa Anna greens. Again, if you read Gabe's article, he thinks that these are going to be much more bent than bent and Poa. Since these are new greens, the Poa hasn't had a chance to invade or creep. I'm just going to go with bent and Poa Anna because that's what they will be eventually, even if they are more bent this year. 5% there. That might be an area where I'm weak. So be it. I just went with the default of the course being bent and Poa Anna. You said you had him last week. That wasn't good. We finalized the mixed condition model with 10% birdies are better on easy and very easy courses. Again, I've talked about it a couple times already. I still think winning scores are going to get into the upper teens. Guys are going to have plenty of birdies this week to contend. Maybe even a couple eagles with a drivable par 4, 2 gettable par 5s. So you're going to have to score low to contend this week. 10% birdies are better there. 10% on par 4s. Since this is converted from a 72 to a par 70, that just means the par 4s carry extra emphasis. There's a look at the mixed condition model that I have made for Detroit and the Rocket Classic this week. Again, areas where I will be weak. If I needed to look at just bent putting, so be it. If around the green plays a little bit more of a factor than I'm thinking, so be it. I could see an argument that maybe you look at 175 to 200, just because players are hitting driver as much as they can. The reason I didn't go with 175 to 200, no, I wanted approach shot distribution, sorry. The reason I didn't go with 175 to 200 is in the past, this has been a dead zone at this course. A very few 175 to 200 approach shots. So if that creeps into it this year, I'll be quite weak to that, especially with those converted par 5s into par 4s. I've got a little bit of emphasis on wedge play. So, if it's more long irons I need to look at, so be it. But there's a look at the mixed condition model, my thought process on why I've included what I have this week, the way I'm thinking about the course, and who I want to target this week in Detroit. So with that, we're going to go to Microsoft Excel, and as I teased in the intro, I have a 6K player as my number one player in my rankings. So before you riot and throw anything through your computer monitor, just hear me out. I am high on this player. I don't know if I'd put him number one, but the reveal of my rankings for the Rocket this week, my number one player is Chris Kirk. Just as a reminder for returning viewers, and for your information if you're a new viewer, my rankings are based on 3 criteria. The rabbit hole rank, which is a straight numerical ranking from the rabbit hole based on the mixed condition model we just talked about, the metrics, percentages, time frame we just talked about. The rabbit hole will rank each player numerically in order from 1 to worst, or best to worst. The course value is an attempt at giving a player a numerical value at how well they have played that course the last 5 years. So I've gone back to 2022 for the Rocket Classic. The lower the number, the better. You see Chris Kirk's course value. He has been excellent here at the Rocket Classic. Somebody like Cam Davis, who is quite low in my rankings, will have a very good course value. Whereas somebody who has not played it as well, maybe Ben Coles or Zach Blair, they're going to have a higher number. They have not played it as well. The lower the number, the better on course value. The third and final piece of my rankings, we are playing DFS. We're trying to find unique options off of our fellow contestants. Projected ownerships are also a factor into my rankings. The more unique a player is, obviously the better. These 3 numbers get put into a mathematical formula, bunch of gyrations and smoke comes out of the computer, and then the rankings are spit out. So for the Rocket Classic, 6,900 Chris Kirk is first, obviously getting helped by his elite course history and the fact that he is sub 3%. You see, even by just the straight numerical ranking, he was top 10, but he is certainly catapulting up thanks to these 2 factors. Cantley is second, JJ Spawn third, Keegan Bradley, I was quite surprised Keegan was 4th, but the numbers love him, and he's actually played pretty well here. Wyndham Clark rounds out my top 5. Cameron Young, Nikolai Højgaard, Jake Knapp, Siwoo Kim, and Davis Thompson round out my top 10. You see a lot of these players are getting hurt by the fact that they are quite a bit not unique, quite a bit owned is what I'm trying to say. And Cameron Young, 30%. Wyndham Clark, close to 20. Patrick Cantley, close to 20. These guys are getting hurt in that regard. But anyway, there's a look at my top 10. You can always argue the ordering. We're going to spend quite a bit of time on Chris Kirk when we go into the 6Ks. So would I really put him number one? Probably not. But, he is quite unique. He's had elite course history here. This is just to kind of give us an idea on who might be either overvalued or undervalued. And certainly Chris Kirk looks like he could be tremendous value this week. There's a look at the top 10. Let us sort on the price board, see where our fellow contestants seem to be going at various areas of the price board, and how we can maneuver around them. In the 5 digits, in the 10Ks, this week we have 2 players. We have Cam Young at 10.5, Xander at 10,200. Xander seems to be quite a bit of a pivot off of Cameron Young, and I'm going to tell you right now, I don't care. Xander is my fade this week. And yes, he is probably one of the biggest names in this field, but with his price and his ownership, which is still around 20%, Xander's going to have to top 5 to make it worthwhile this week. And I'm sorry, I just don't see it happening. The putter is nowhere near what it was. Yes, he can spike, and he spiked it at Aronimink, which are Don Ross greens, but he's not been consistent there. He had 2 pretty darn poor showings in the lead up to the Open. I'm just more confident in Cameron Young performing well than I am in Xander. I could see Xander having a T29 or, heaven forbid, like a T60. And that's just not going to cut it here with him being the second highest priced player in the 10Ks with still all that ownership. I'm just not there. I'm just not there with Xander. Now, this could certainly come back and bite me. Absolutely. But not only has his putter not been great, his long irons haven't been good in 2026, like at all. He hasn't given himself many opportunities with the wedges either. I'm just out on Xander. Having said that, Cameron Young, I will certainly play, but at 30%, I can get away from Cameron Young as well. Now, I'm playing some Cameron Young. I'm not fading both of these players. I'm not. I'm going to play Cameron Young, but this is a lot of ownership. I have no problem building balanced lineups this week because I think I can find some unique options in the 7s. So, of these 2, I prefer Cameron Young, which kind of stinks considering he's 30% owned. But if I am up here in the 10Ks, it is for Cameron Young. I just like a lot of what he's going to bring to the table this week. So that's how I see the 10s. Cameron Young, a little bit, maybe 20 to 25%. And then Xander is a complete fade. He is the fade for the week. Moving into the 9s. I am not playing Xander, partially because you can't play everybody, and I had a hard time separating a lot of the 9Ks here. I did. I want to like Chris Goddard. He's also the most highly owned in the 10K or in the 9Ks, excuse me. So that was a little bit of a sour note on him. I mean, Jackson Koivu, his win, do we think he's going to back it up with another solid performance? He certainly could, but we don't know how he's going to handle being a winner on the PGA Tour yet. My guess is he's going to treat this as full systems go, try to make the playoffs, things of that nature, but we simply don't know. And he's played here once before, and it was not pretty. So we just there's a lot of unknowns with Koivu. Having said that, I still rostered him a couple times. Wyndham Clark, very popular, probably for good reason. But his last time out, he disappointed. He missed the cut at the Open. And that should have been a good place for him, you would have thought, considering you couldn't get into much trouble off the tee and in the form that he was in. So he's got a little bit of a question mark. You take out the Open, he's been fantastic the past couple months, yes. But, I mean, he still comes in here with a slight question mark about his Open Championship performance. Russell Henley, does he really have the length to compete here. So all of these guys had something for and something against them. I'm telling you now, I played all, 7 of them? I have rostered all 7 of them among my lineups. And again, I play many lineups, so I can afford to give myself that coverage. That said, I am generally going to 3 players in the 9s. First one is Chris Goddard. Ownership be damned. I think this is a pretty darn good fit for him. He's played okay here, but he's certainly a lot better of a player now than he was even at this point last year. So I do like Chris Goddard. I'm going to Wyndham Clark. I am a little bit worried off of his performance of the Open Championship. Yes, but think about the places he generally plays best, like the U.S. Open in Shinnecock. Yes, that rough was highly penalizing, but you had miles of room to miss. There wasn't water there. There's no water here at Detroit. He can miss as much as he wants and just let the driver eat. So I do like that, and he's been hot lately, other than the miscut at the Open. The third of the 9Ks that I'm playing, it's very boring. He's not a popular player, but my gosh, Patrick Cantlay has played pretty consistently well this year for not having elite finishes. The Open, a bland top 30, but it was a complete gain. The Travelers, top 15, not great because it's a limited field, but the irons are really good right now. The off the tee has been solid, other than, a little bit of a hiccup at the Scottish Open. He's gained strokes putting in 4 of his past 5. Like, he's just put up results. Not elite results, but results. Top 30, top 15, top 20. And then you go and look at his performance at the Rocket, and it's pretty good. Runner-up in 2022. Middling performance last year where he ball struck it very well, just didn't make a whole lot of putts. If you're going to tell me that Patrick Cantlay is going to gain 5 1/4 strokes ball striking, if you tell me that right now, I'll take it. So, I don't know. I also have a hard time believing that Cantlay's truly going to be up here with Wyndham Clark and Koivu and Goddard up in terms of ownership. I just have a hard time believing that. I think he's going to be more 16, 15%. And if I'm wrong, so be it. But those are the 3 players I've gone to most often in the 9s. Goddard, Clark, Cantlay. Again, re-emphasizing, I played all of them. Siwoo, I want to like. He's not necessarily the longest. You can see that by the lack of distance. It's really about the putter for Siwoo. Can he make enough putts in what has generally been not necessarily a putting contest or a birdie fest, but pretty close to it? I still have my doubts on that. Having said that, he's having a career year. So, it's worthwhile. We talked about Koivu and, what's he going to be like off of his first win. Hey, good evening, Hanka. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Haven't gotten to Pot Gator in the 7s yet. We'll definitely talk about him. Koivu's quite a bit of a wild card, but he's also extremely popular, so kind of limited my use there. Henley didn't rate out well. I worry about the distance, but he did finish T10 here in his one try. And he's also the best Don Ross player. I don't know. I played him a couple times. I do want to highlight Hideki. I used Hideki a little bit more than what you would think. Hideki's starting to wake up. 3 straight top 15s. And don't look now. That off the tee is actually starting to be a weapon, not a detriment, like it was early this year. We all know. I mean, it's a little surprising to see him lose 2.5 strokes with the irons, because that's usually his calling card. He's been elite around the green. Even the putter is behaving. And then you take a look at his performance at past Rocket Championships. A couple of top 15s. Just missed a top 20 here. Withdraw on a miscut. Don't look great, but he's had some success here. Don't look now. Hideki is starting to put some things together with these 3 top 15. So I'm playing a little bit more of Hideki than you might think, based on his ranking in here. So that's how I see the 9s. I was not able to separate anybody out to fade completely. There was something for and against all these players, so I played them all with the most focus on Goddard, Clark, and Cantlay. Moving down to the 8s. The upper 8s is a vacuum. This is eating up a lot of ownership, and that's also why I don't think Patrick Cantlay is going to be 18, 19, even 20%, because a lot of people are on Ben Griffin and Jake Knapp and JJ Spawn and Ryan Gerard. I think Hideki, Cantlay, maybe even Russell Henley, I think they get squeezed in terms of ownership. I just do. So coming in here into the upper 8s, I'm going to play these 2 players a lot. Jake Knapp was my first click in the outright market. I was happy that I got him at decent odds before it kind of cratered. I got him close to 40-1 right when the odds came out Monday morning. So Jake Knapp's been good here. I highlighted him last week, but same goes. His ball striking's there. It's starting to come around from the injury. This place lets him play to his strengths of being long, not necessarily having to be the most accurate. I like Jake Knapp quite a bit. And this doesn't feel like a great JJ Spawn course, but he's been excellent here. I mean, excellent here. 6 for 6 with no finish worse than a T33. I've been on Spawn all year. I'm going to continue to ride JJ Spawn and the really, really good irons. He's very good on Don Ross designs. Again, Sedgefield. I don't remember what he did at Pinehurst, but I feel like it was okay. He's very, very good with the wedge in his hand. I'm going to play quite a bit of these 2, which means I'm going to be less on Ben Griffin and Ryan Gerard. A lot of people have talked about Ryan Gerard this week. I guess I understand it, but he didn't rate out well. I'm just going to take the wait and see approach on Ryan Gerard. Harris English is a disaster right now. No thanks. Akshay was my last cut in my player pool this week, and if we know anything about how this goes, that means you need to bet the house on Akshay to like top 10 or top 5, because last week Brian Harmon was my last cut in my player pool, and he finishes inside the top 5 or whatever he did. I know he was 3rd for most of the day Sunday. So Batia was my last cut in my player pool. I really, really thought long and hard about it. Just wanted to get others in there more. Højgaard rates out extremely well. I'm not so sure on this one. We take a look at Nikolai. The model wasn't, because it's all focused on the distance. And I get it. But even so, Like he's not the elite driver he was when he was putting up, massive performances with the two runner-ups, when he was all the rage in Phoenix. Like he's not putting up those numbers off the tee right now. The putter is down at the moment, and I don't know if he's played here. Oh, he's played here 3 times. Okay, a couple of top 25s, so it's better than what I thought. I don't know. I'm just a little hesitant on Nikolai Højgaard, even though this feels like it would be like a great fit for him, and that's why the model really, really liked him. I played him once or twice. I'd much rather go to Thorbjornsen, right around his price. Even if he is more popular. So I bet Thorbjornsen. I didn't bet Højgaard, and they were right around the same price. Tells you everything you need to know there. Ricky, maybe once in my mini lineups that I played. Maybe once. So I'm going to play quite a bit of Knapp and Spawn. Yes, they're chalky. I will play a little bit of Thorbjornsen, but since I was playing a lot of the 9s, not doing the 8s a whole lot unless it's, by choice. Like I'm going like Cam Young down to Knapp. Or maybe I do a balanced build of, just for example, Wyndham Clark, Cantlay, Knapp, or Spawn. Something like that. All right, moving into the upper 7s. I was high on Michael Brennan last week. For 54 holes, he made me look very intelligent. And then he had a disastrous Sunday. I still like the player. I liked the fit more last week, considering there was a little bit more emphasis on accuracy. He's plenty long enough to certainly be a factor here this week, but I liked Brennan more when there was trouble off the tee. Look at his win at the Black Desert. Yes, those are very wide, forgiving fairways, but if you miss them, you're in deep shit with the lava rocks. So I still think it's probably fine. I'm just lower on him this week than I was last week. Keegan rating 4th, very surprising for me. Very surprising. But I need to give credit to Keegan. Keegan's irons have actually been really good lately. Maybe not world beating, but just been consistently good. When he started the year so horribly with his irons, he's now gained in 8 straight events with the irons we're talking about here. The putter is whatever. It's Keegan Bradley. But you combine the good iron form with his history at the Rocket, in which he's 5 for 5. Nothing better than a T14. So probably some limited upside here. But I think if you are trying to get unique off of a lot of the chalk, particularly in the 8s, but especially, Thorbjornsen, Batia, Højgaard, like Keegan's sitting at less than 10% with a player whose irons are really, really good right now. He's still plenty long enough to compete here. I don't know. It's interesting. I'll put it that way. It's quite interesting. I also like Marco Pinge. He's not going to rate out well because he's been hurt, but his calling card is the driver. He is elite with the driver. This guy is a better version of Aldrich Potgieter when he's right, when he's healthy. I think this is a good spot for him. Whether or not he's fully healthy or not remains to be seen. But I'm going to play more Marco Pinge than I should, hoping that this is kind of where he starts to rebuild and rebound from a tough 2026. This is a really good course fit for him. We're talking a lot about ball striking. Davis Thompson was really, really good last week, which is dangerous because now that really makes me want to play him. And anytime I try to back Davis Thompson, it generally backfires. His long irons haven't been great. He's not a very good putter at all, but he's actually been okay on this surface. I'm going to play much more Davis Thompson than I should, and I'm ready for the disappointment. I am ready for Davis Thompson to be this week's Doug Gim, what Doug Gim was last week. But I'm going to play Davis Thompson quite a bit. Very good on these Don Ross designs. Excellent ball striker. Hoping to God he makes a putt or two. You talked about Eric Cole, Rose. He did finish 6th here, I believe it was in 2024. I worry about the driver, certainly. But I'm not completely out on Eric Cole either. If he can do anything with the driver, like if he's just literally 0.5 with the driver, the rest of his game's actually been fairly solid. Again, it's only 1 year of sample size, but he was good here in 2024 with a complete gain and a very balanced complete gain all across the board. I made sure to put Eric Cole in a lineup, but I wasn't stretching myself to do it. But he is in one of my lineups. So I don't love it, but I don't hate it, Rose. I hate to have the wishy-washy or non-committal answer, but I mean that's just simply the truth. There were others that I would have much rather have gone to than Eric Cole, but at the end of the day, I did make sure to have him in a lineup. So people think Jackson Suber is going to bounce back. Not in love with it. It's fine. He's just not as unique as you're hoping for in the mid sevens. Corey Connors, much like Keegan Bradley, this feels like a safe play. I see no world in which Corey Connors finishes above T22. He just doesn't have that upside right now. Probably was just guy, the talent, like I mentioned, made me curious. A guy I really want to hear about is Michael Kim. Michael Kim's been horrible here. Has not been good here. I take that back. He's probably been okay here, but you saw what he did after the 59, Hank. It was a struggle. So, we're talking about Connors. I just don't see the upside here. Now, if you're playing 50-50s and double ups, he's probably a decent choice to make the cut. But again, like other than the Travelers T10 or top 10, okay, I forgot about the Open. It's a top 15, but like I still think T39 at the 3M is about what you're going to get from Corey Connors. He's never played here. The irons are fine. He doesn't have a lot of distance. You're banking on Corey Connors' putter staying hot because it's generally not very good. I don't know. And Corey Connors is not very good around the green. I don't see the winning upside with Corey Connors. Again, probably a safe play for your 50-50s and your double ups, but especially in your big GPPs, if he's 11, 12%, no thanks. Moving down into the lower sevens, I like Matt Wallace. You casually mentioned Matt Wallace early on, Rose. I think Matt Wallace could be sneaky this week. His irons have been very good lately. You can forgive an Open Championship in which he made the cut, just being slightly less than field average with the irons across 4 rounds. Even when he was missing the cut, his irons stayed strong. He missed the cut because he was missing putts. surprisingly, for me, Wallace has some history here. Top 10, top 15. Hasn't been as good lately, but he's never lost strokes on approach here at Detroit. He generally putts this surface or these greens pretty well. I think Matt Wallace is quite sneaky at 7,400 this week, and I made sure to put him in a couple of lineups with other players that I'm high on. This is one of the players I'm trying to get unique with, is Matt Wallace. Like him quite a bit. Johnny Kiefer. Johnny Kiefer's best courses are generally when he can just let the driver eat and not have to worry about trouble. That's certainly the case here at Detroit. Top 20 in irons, even after a horrendous 3M. He's still top 20 in irons lately. Top 10 off the tee when it's driver heavy. 7th in distance. Yeah, the putter's bad. Okay. You can say that about a lot of guys. I like Johnny Kiefer. I'm going to play more Johnny Kiefer than I should this week. RNP is always a pet player of mine. I'm playing Rasmus Nergaard Peterson some this week. He hadn't played Don Ross Designs well, but it's a very small sample size. Like, the driver is actually really good right now for RNP. He's actually been good on the surface because he's normally not a very good putter. A little concerned about the wedges, sure. They haven't been good, but I like Rasmus Nergaard Peterson off the tee, hoping he kind of cobbles together some things to make a cut, and we'll see what happens on the weekend. So I like quite a bit here in the 7,400s. I even played He Who Shall Not Be Named once because he really burned me last week. Coming down to the lower portions of the sevens, a lot of people like Ben Coles. It's fine. He's popular, number one iron player. I'm going to give you a couple of reasons to be careful on Ben Coles. One of them, he's not a good putter on this surface at all. Like, at all. And with the 2 converted par 5s, it's not the be-all, end-all. It's only 2 holes. But Ben Coles is not very good at long par 4s, especially these 450 to 500 par 4s, which are pretty prevalent around Detroit. He's generally not very good on these longer par 4s. He's good on the short to mid-length par 4s. So that is probably why he's not been amazing here. He does have a top 20. Last year he played extremely well and then lost 7.5 strokes on the green. 2022 was really bad. I mean, Ben Coles has been playing great, no doubt about it. I can get away from Ben Coles a little bit this week. I played him, but not to the level that I have the past couple of weeks when I was really, really high on him. I want to highlight Max Grazerman. Max Grazerman's irons right now are in the tank. They are terrible right now. And so why in the world am I backing a guy who has not gained strokes with the irons, I think, since like April? It's been really bad. May 23rd. He's lost strokes 7 straight events. And it's not just a little either. I mean, 5.5 in 2 rounds at the Open. 4.5 at the in Scotland. 6. Lost 6 strokes with the irons at the Charles Schwab in 2 rounds. That is horrendous. Why am I backing Max Grazerman? Couple of things. The off the tee, he is long. Not necessarily the most accurate, but you don't have to be here. The off the tee is really good right now. The putter is pretty darn good right now. He is 17th in very easy and easy in this field. But like I said about there being a skill to playing Don Ross designs, Max Grazerman is, I think, 5th in this field in total performance on Don Ross designs, including a playoff loss here last year in which he has gone berserk on these greens. You don't expect him to gain 9 strokes on the greens. That's unsustainable. But even the other year, he gained 4. And then you take a look at Sedgefield, where he's also got a runner-up finish. There's something about these Don Ross designs that he plays well. Top 15 in Aronimink earlier this year. Complete gain at a Don Ross design. The combination of the driver, the putter, Don Ross, easy. Max Grazerman is my bold play this week. I'm going to be not necessarily all in on Max Grazerman, but I'm going to play him a lot. So if he does not play well, I will lose. People have asked about Aldrich. I played him once. Number 1 driving distance player. Great when it's driver heavy. But when I looked at Aldrich and his form leading into his win last year at the Rocket, he was gaining a whole lot off the tee in the lead up. 5, 3, 3.5, 2.25. The irons had also spiked a little bit. The putter was going a little bit. 3 of his past 4. The putter is nowhere near what it is right now. He's doing about the same stuff off the tee than what he is. I'm not as confident in Aldrich this year as I was last year, because I think I played him a little bit last year here. And then you asked about Michael Kim, Hanka. I mean, yeah, 59 is great and all, but we saw what happened on the weekend. It was a struggle. Be bold, just don't be Dylan Wu bold. That's Max Grazerman for me this week. I mean, I don't know. Michael Kim's also a guy that I just don't feel like I get right a lot. Past couple times here have been okay, but he's still never had a top 25 here at the Rocket. First 3 times were pretty bad. I don't know. I'm not there with Michael Kim. Great story. Not there. Ben James, I believe some of you all in the community have voted him as the answer to the poll question. Akshay and Ben James were the 2 last cuts in my player pool. I really wanted to get to Ben James, but at the same price, I'm just playing a whole lot of Max Grazerman, and I did play a little bit of Ben Cole, so I just couldn't quite get there. 7,200, take a long look at Kevin Yu. Don't hate it. He's not been good here, but he is playing a lot better lately. I like Kevin Yu. I think he's sneaky good this week. Take a look at Jaeger. Much like Marco Pinge, this is just a really good course fit for Jaeger. But Jaeger's been boom or bust here. Jaeger has played the Rocket 5 times. He's finished tied for 5th, tied for 9th. The other 3 are missed cuts. So literally Jaeger is a boom or bust option. Because of that potential, I played him once. That's about all I got for you. It's just a decent course fit for him because he's not been playing well lately other than the alternate field events. Let's move into the 6s. I'm going to save Chris Kirk for last. But there's a couple players in here that I want to advocate that you can look at if you're trying to get some price savings. I was pretty high on William Mao last week. And yes, he missed the cut. But if you actually take a look at his underlying statistics, he played really well. He just lost it all on the greens. He lost 5.5 strokes in 2 rounds on those greens. But he gained 6 shots ball striking. Like, he was a field average player last week. The irons are in fuego right now. The off the tee is pretty good. Has he done? Forget what he's done. He's made the cut in his 1 appearance at the Rocket. I am willing to take another chance on William Mao. Not all missed cuts are equal. This is a really, really good missed cut. He's not a good putter in general, and he just lost 5.5. Like, you don't. Is this one of his worst performances of his career? It was the 3rd worst performance of his career. Earlier at the RBC Heritage this year, Charles Schwab, and like, it's a severe drop off to the next worst performance. That's just like I talk about gaining 9 strokes or whoever we were talking about earlier. Just like that's not sustainable. Losing 5.5 is not sustainable. Not for professionals. He's gonna bounce back, even if he's minus 1.74. It's not great, but I'm going to bank on the ball striking staying in form. So I'm willing to go back to William Mao. Not a lot. I did it once, but it was worth a look. Oops, sorry, wrong spreadsheet. I need that one. So take a look at William Mao. In the 6,700 range, Patrick Fishburne. Also played him once last week. Don't hate it. Again, all predicated on the driver, which is acceptable, especially down here at 6,700. Very good on Don Ross designs. The putter is starting to warm up. He's generally good on this surface. It's worth a look. But the number 1 player in my rankings. Let me show you why I am so high on Chris Kirk. Chris Kirk is really good with the irons right now. He's never strong off the tee. And yes, this putter is really bad right now. He's not generally had good putting form coming in to the Rocket. But that hasn't stopped him before. Playoff loss last year. Top 15, top 20, top 15, top 25, pretty much a top 20. He's generally put these greens pretty well, even when he hasn't had great putting form coming into him. I don't know. There's something to be said about Chris Kirk and his irons being extremely hot right now. Not to mention the fact that Sedgefield. Another Don Ross design. Top 5. Top 15. Top 30. What do you do with this year's PGA? Made the cut. Look at the irons. There's a skill to playing Don Ross designs. I am extremely overweight on Chris Kirk. If he doesn't play well, I will lose. But I like the potential on Chris Kirk. All right. That is a look at the price board and where our fellow contestants are going and how I see some things. Let's start making some lineups. And go ahead and throw out your suggestions for the community lineup. As always, we are going to put together a community lineup, put it into a big GPP. It's going to be in the birdie contest, the 20 max entry, $3 per entry. It's the only entry we're going to do, so we're going to try and be as unique as possible since it's our only entry. Muson says Blair. You know what? Good segue there, Muson. Hey, Colts. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Just before we get this started, let me tell you why I'm not liking Blair. And I realize it looks like I'm dropping some frames, so bear with me. I'm hoping the internet kind of holds on or whatever. But let me show you why I'm not so big on Zach Blair. This is not a good course fit for him, Muson, at all. I understand he's been playing great lately. 3 straight top 15s. He's never great off the tee. All that stuff. His performance at the Rocket is really bad. Really, really bad. He's made 1 cut in 3 tries. It was way back in 2020. This just does not feel like a good fit for Zach Blair, despite the fact that he's been playing well lately. Again, 3M. Yes, it might be a little bit more driver reliant than most courses, but there's a premium on accuracy, and that's what Zach Blair does extremely well. Isco, Hurstbourne need to be extremely accurate. John Deere's a decent mix. He played extremely well at the U.S. Open. I'll give him that, and that's much more like much more like Detroit than these other places. It's just I'm not a believer in Zach Blair continuing the form, but it's our lineup, not my lineup, so I will have Blair off to the side if we so choose to put him in that lineup. Okay, let's make some lineups here. I'm going to start by trying to make some chalky lineups. The most owned player in on the slate this week is Cameron Young. And it doesn't look like our fellow contestants are going into the 6Ks really at all. You've got Mao at 4.5. That's about it. They're seemingly bottoming out at Jordan Smith at 9% or Ben Coles 10.5%. So if these are the boundaries that we have to work with, looks like Jackson Suber is in this lineup. Gosh dang it. Maybe Davis Thompson. Yeah, 8,500 per player. Batia or Thorbjornsen. I'm going to say Batia because he was my last cut, so I'm not playing him at all. 8,600 Gerard. This looks like it could be, a fairly common Cameron Young shell. I don't think these are the exact players that are going to be in it, but you get the idea. Cameron Young down to like a Gerard or a Spawn or a Knapp. In fact, maybe they go, this actually might be more, Jake Knapp to Thorbjornsen. Yeah, just under 100. So you can see how our fellow contestants can kind of mix and match this Cameron Young style. But they're going Cameron Young, upper 8, either low 8 or high 7. Ben Coles seems to be the bottom at 10%. Maybe Meisner, 9.5. Jordan Smith, 9%. That's really about as far down as our fellow contestants seem to be going. Suber's popular. Thompson's, somewhat popular. Yeah. That's one way lineups are getting built. The other way is if our fellow contestants are going quite a bit more balanced, I'm going to try and bottom this lineup out at, say, Connors. Maybe Jackson Suber in this as well. Let's go Let's see. This would be Thorbjornsen, Batia. Yeah, I mean, it's the same kind of deal here. And Gerard. Yeah, so this is a little bit more of a balanced shell. Same kind of players. If we go true balanced, looks like it's Jackson Koivu, Jake Knapp, Batia. There we go. This is what I wanted. Thorbjornsen, Suber, 77. Anybody here? Davis Thompson. This looks like the balanced lineup for the week. Again, high 90s in terms of total ownership. You're not going to be able to differentiate yourself enough in your big GPPs to be able to do it. So how are we going to maneuver around these? Well, first, I'm going to show you what I've been doing to try to get a little bit different in terms of my balanced lineups. Like I said, I have no problem getting away from Cameron Young, Chris Goddard up here. Let's start with Wyndham. And a lot of this is predicated on the belief that I have, and I could be wrong. I think Patrick Cantlay is going to get squeezed. I do not see a 16% Ben Griffin, 20% Jake Knapp, 18% Spawn, 18% Gerard equating to an 18% Cantlay. If these ownerships are correct, which I think they are, because I've heard a lot of talk about Griffin, heard a lot of talk about Gerard this week, Wyndham Clark. I think Cantlay gets squeezed. I think Hideki gets squeezed. Hindley gets squeezed. And I'm really high on Cantlay this week. So I've been doing something to this effect where I go Wyndham Clark, Cantlay, hoping or expecting his ownership to be a little bit less. I like Jake Knapp, but I don't know if he's going to be unique enough for us here. Hideki's kind of dangerous. You could come down to like maybe a JJ Spawn just to get just a little bit more uniqueness off of that. But again, like you have plenty of options down here in the sevens, lower sevens. Matt Wallace, 7,400, I like quite a bit. Johnny Kiefer. I don't hate Rasmus Nergard Peterson. I'm going to play a lot of Max Grazerman. I do like Davis Thompson. Marco Pinge. You're going to take a big chance on Marco Pinge, but I'm getting my uniqueness here in the sevens. I'm playing the chalk up top, getting my uniqueness in the sevens. Again, Davis Thompson at 77 can round this out. And you're well within, the kind of the boundary of what you kind of want in terms of total ownership. I really try not to go above 80% in terms of total ownership. It's acceptable sometimes, especially if you like certain players, but I try to keep it under 80. Wyndham's going to be a little bit popular. Spawn's going to be popular. Thompson might be popular for his range, but you still got some uniqueness here. Again, I think Cantlay's going to be more unique than what you think. Pinge, Wallace. That's the way I've been doing a lot of my balanced lineups. But you can go to the other extreme too. Cameron Young, Chris Goddard, get them both in there. Because this is all predicated around the 6,900 number one player in my rankings, Chris Kirk. And you still have enough room that you could squeeze probably a lower 8 in here if you wanted to. Like me, I'm going Max Grazerman. If you're a big Ricky believer, I'm not. Maybe you like Nikolai Højgaard. Thorbjornsen. Maybe you take my advice and take a long look at Keegan, who's been really good here. And again, we've got that magical 7,700 number where it's Davis Thompson. Maybe you leave a little bit of money on the table and go like Johnny Kiefer. Still under that 80% total ownership that I try to strive for with the two big guns. in terms of ownership and pricing and favoritism, all predicated around the fact that you can maneuver with Chris Kirk at 6,900 and Max Grazerman, who I'm extremely high on, at 73. Okay, we've got a couple of suggestions for the community lineup. Keep them coming in. If I need to make an executive decision, I will. But we've got a shout for Zach Blair and for Jacob Bridgman. So let's hear what else people want to put into this community lineup. Need to get back on the right foot with that. We did pretty darn well. Was it at the Open? I think it was at the Open that we more than doubled our money on that entry. And then last week we did not do all that well. Ryo Hisatsune from Z. Okay. And while you all are putting in your suggestions for the community lineup, I'll talk about the poll question. Which of these 4 young players you think will have the best career? This is such an arbitrary thing because they're early 20s, and in Blades Brown and Miles Russell's case, they are still teenagers. I am really, really high on Blades Brown. I like the fact that he is sticking with the Korn Ferry Tour, getting his lumps in and getting his feet wet there, playing as much as he can there, and then coming up to the big time like what Akshay Bhatia did. Akshay's been a pretty darn good pro. I like the path that Blades Brown is on, so I'm going to take Blades Brown in terms of my early pick. My summer 2026 selection of these 4 being that'll have the best career. I could have also asked about, do you think it's a little bit too premature to put Jackson Koivu on the President's Cup? I've heard some chatter about people wanting to put Koivu on the President's Cup. My argument to that is who would you take off? But I don't necessarily hate the idea. Who would you take off? All right, if we start putting some of these players in here, like for example, Z, I'm going to have you give me one of those 3, Ryo, Connors, or Jordan Smith, to put in here. I know a lot of people probably aren't as high on Max Grazerman as I am, so I'm trying to think of a worthwhile executive decision. I kind of like Davis Thompson. I like Patrick Cantlay, trying to be unique. But yeah, Z, which one of those 3, Ryo, Connors, or Jordan Smith, are you going to be most favoriting to put into this? And then for everybody else, we've got one from Muson, one from Bridgman. Don't hesitate to throw out who you want to see into this. This is a community lineup. It's our lineup, not just mine or not just yours. So we'll maneuver and put people in as we need to. But who do you want to see into this? I don't want to spend too much time on it because I still need to get to Gabe's Substack chat. And then, hey, good evening, Casey. And then I also need to finalize my lineups. Keegan, 78. Keegan Bradley. Corey Connors. It's good to see you in chat, Casey. Thanks for jumping in there. Much appreciated here towards the end. We got 10,000 that we can put in here. I don't mind leaving a little bit of money on the table. We can either do Cameron Young and somebody lower, or we can do Goddard and anybody. So if people really like Xander, we can do Xander and Goddard, or we can do Cameron Young and Koivu down. I'm with you, Colts fan. I like Cantlay. He was probably going to be my executive decision. So from here, just, rapid fire it. Young, Shoffley, Goddard. If you want to put Koivu in or Siwoo, I'm with you there, Colts. Hey, good evening, Too Simple. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. I talked about him a little bit in the 6Ks, just very quickly. If you want a more detailed thought process on him, after the show, take a look when I'm talking about the 6Ks. I'm willing to go back to William Mao. Not all miscuts are the same or equal. William Mao actually played very, very well last week. He just lost everything on the greens. I'm willing to go back to him because I was pretty high on him last week. I would not shy away from William Mao this week. Good question, Too Simple. Thanks for jumping in chat towards the end here. Z says he's high on Xander. We can put the international, our President's Cup teams and Ryder Cup team together. How do we feel about this as a community lineup? Xander, Patrick Cantlay, Bridgman, Keegan, Connors, and Zach Blair. Give me a thumbs up or a yes or whatever. Or if you want to see somebody different, put them in chat very quickly. But as of right now, that looks like it's going to be our community lineup. Very quickly, my core for this week, and I understand not all these players are going to fit into the same lineup, but the players I'm using most often in my lineups are these players here. I'm using Thorbjornsen quite a bit. I'm using Davis Thompson a lot. I'm using Grazerman and Kirk. I'm going to highlight these two players here. If they have a good week, I'm going to be in really good shape, especially since they're unique. If they don't play well, it's going to be pretty bad. Cantlay, I'm pretty high on. I'm thinking he's going to be a little bit less owned than 18%. Thorbjornsen's a little bit less. Young's a little bit less. I'm more on Goddard than Young, but I like both. But that's my core for the week. These are the players that are going to be in the majority of my lineups. 10 players. So a little bit looser of a core, if you will, because I mostly go 7 or 8 guys. But Chris Kirk allows me to mix and match a whole lot more higher up on the price board. Killed it with the long game, failed on the green. Greens of the Rock Classic mostly downward sloping in hopes to help him out more. I'm a big believer in the ball striking. The miscut. If you just see miscut last week, it isn't promising. But he actually played really, really well. He just lost it all with the putter. Not all miscuts are the same. So I'm with you on that, Too Simple. Okay, there's my core for the week. Last thing for this evening, the 2026 Picks Challenge between Gabe and I. After a pretty poor performance last week in this regard, I am down 2 points with 4 weeks to go. So I've got some ground I need to make up. This tournament, and I'm gonna bring the camera back here for a second. This tournament has produced 3 75-1 or longer odds champions in the past 5 years. Cam Davis, 150-1 in 2021. Last year, Aldrich Potgieter was more than 100-1. Cam Davis in 2024 was 75 or 80-1. This tournament is prone for long shots to win. So in that vein, I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to take Max Grazerman as my winner. I gave you all the reasons why I like Max Grazerman when we went through the price board. We took a deep dive into him. Excellent Don Ross performance. Excellent putter on this surface. The driver's really good right now. You just have to hope that the irons wake up because he's lost strokes with the irons in 7 straight. I'm going to take Max Grazerman to win. Gabe is going to go with Siwoo Kim, somebody who he's been on all year long. Favorite play, Davis Thompson. It makes me a little bit nervous because every time I try to back Davis Thompson, it generally blows up in my face. But I was very encouraged by what I saw last week at the 3M. He's played well here in the past. Gabe, favorite play, Michael Thorbjornsen, who I really like. So don't have any arguments there. My fade this week is Xander. Gave you all the reasons why. I'd much rather go to Goddard or Cameron Young. Others in the 9Ks. I don't think Xander's putter is good right now. He's just too inconsistent. He's too high priced, too high owned. If he doesn't top 5, it's not worth it. So give me a fade of Xander. I'm going to disagree here with Gabe. He's going to fade Jake Knapp. He's not a big he's not a big believer in Jake Knapp being all the way back. I am, so we'll see. Mad Scientist play. Player that, low owned, low ownership. You've got to be a little bit mad to think about using them. I'm going to take Chris Kirk, number 1 in my rankings. I'm going to trust the rankings, even if they are a little bit skewed for past performance and projected ownership. Chris Kirk's my Mad Scientist play, and Gabe is going to think Zach Blair is going to continue the strong play. Gabe's going to take Zach Blair as the Mad Scientist. FOMO, fear of missing out. I'm going to FOMO Marco Pinge. This is a great course fit for him. We'll see if he is truly all the way back and healthy. Gabe is going to FOMO Ben Griffin. And then, for lack of better terms, our wild card category this week is favorite play that hasn't been mentioned. That whole sentence doesn't fit in that little space there. So I just had to call it another favorite. This is favorite play who hasn't been mentioned yet. I love Jake Knapp. He was my first click on the odds boards this week. Close to 40-1 when the odds came out Monday morning. I do like this fit for him. And then Gabe really likes Ryo Hisatsune. So that is going to be it for a DFS Tactics show. Thank you for the compliment. Too simple. Really, really much appreciated. I'm going to end the poll so that way I don't miss anybody that was in chat. So thanks to Z, thanks to Trip, Muson, Mark, Rose, Hanka, Colts, Casey, and Too Simple for being in the chat this evening and jumping in there. Very, very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. Always appreciate it. I love what I do, taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician's view of what he sees with the ultimate goal of trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Do me a favor. I hate self-promotion, but if you enjoyed the lineup building, if you enjoyed digging deep into these players on a Wednesday night to finalize your lineups, hit the like button. It really does help me out when you do that. If you feel so inclined, subscribe to the channel. I am live 3 nights a week talking in-depth golf statistics, looking at potential values in outright markets, and trying to help us all make winning DFS lineups. So thanks again for all of the support. Very, very much appreciated. For all of the wagers you have made this week for the Rocket Classic, for all the DFS contests you play this week for the Rocket Classic, and for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.